you will not have power. Oh. Hi, I'm Cliff, and this is my garage. And if this is your first time joining me, thanks for dropping by. Today, I want to show you how to add a new circuit to a car. So for instance, if you need power for something like a dash cam or a rear view camera or a radar detector, whatever it is, you want to run power to it. And instead of like trying to find a wire that's live somewhere near it and cutting it and tying into it, sometimes you have to do that. But the correct way is to use a little thing called a fuse tap. And what this does is it plugs into your fuse box. It replaces the fuse that's there, and then it gives you, it keeps the original circuit, but it gives you a new one out of this wire. Now, I've seen some videos talking about how to use a fuse tap. The problem is I've not seen one that explains the right way to put it in, because there is a definite right way and a wrong way, and the wrong way can have some serious consequences. So I'm going to show you not only how to install a fuse tap, but how to do it correctly. Now, you're not going to need any kind of equipment to do this. What you will need is some sort of a circuit tester. Now, it can be a very simple one that you use kind of it just pokes in there and it lights up if there's 12 volts there. Or it can be an inexpensive multimeter, let's say a $15, $20 multimeter. Or it could be a very nice one like this Fluke that I've got. I've had this for years. It's not even a very expensive Fluke, but it is a very nice one. Now, practically speaking, there's not a whole lot of difference between a $20 multimeter and I think I paid $100 for this multimeter. It definitely shows up in terms of the build quality. This feels much nicer than a $20 multimeter. It also has a few features that aren't on a $20 multimeter, but the big one is that usually $20 multimeters, well, they don't preserve themselves very well. It is very possible to fry a multimeter if you poke the leads into the wrong place. Well, the Fluke multimeter is very smart about not letting you destroy it. And I've made that mistake a couple of times. The Fluke just shrugs it off and says, "Oh, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna let that happen." And so I really like it. If it's within your budget, I highly recommend this multimeter. But if you got a $20 one, we can make it work too. Generally, trying to show you how to install a fuse tap is a bit of a pain because you're working in a fuse box on a car, and a fuse box typically is located up under the dash, or it's buried in the sides of the footwells of the car. It's hard to get you and a camera in there at the same time. Luckily, on my Ford F-150, as well as my Ford E350, there is a fuse box located right at the front of the engine compartment. Ford calls it a power distribution box, but it's a fuse box. It's a plastic box with a watertight cover that has a bunch of fuses and relays in it. Best of all, it's very, very accessible and very, very visible with a camera. So that's going to make my life a whole lot easier. Okay, we know we need a multimeter. We've got our fuse tap. Let's go in there and I'll show you how this is done. And here we are in the engine compartment, and this is the front power distribution box. Lid flips up, exposes all of our fuses and relays. Now do be careful, that is a live positive lug, so don't be laying any tools here and shorting it out. You're going to get a show that you won't probably enjoy. Now I've also got my multimeter set up here. In fact, we can even test that. I've got it grounded off with the clamp and put this on here. Get a good connection there. You can see there is voltage there. I want to get a circuit that has a particular behavior to power my daytime running lights, and that would be that it comes on when the key is turned on, and it does not have power when the key is turned or is removed. And so by looking at my owner's manual, I identified that this particular circuit, which is fuse number 52, has that behavior that I want, that circuit. I forget what it actually powers. When it powers up, some kind of a fan comes on here. I really just don't remember what it was. Installing the fuse tap is really, really simple. You have these two prongs, and they go down into the fuse box, replacing the original fuse. Then you take the original fuse and you put it into this bottom set of slots here, and that now completes the original circuit. The power flows up this leg, goes through the fuse here, and then back down the other leg, and everything, electrically speaking, is exactly as it was. Let's just remove that fuse, pop it in there, and push it back into the block. All done with that. Now, the other part of this is to actually split the power. And what that does, or how it does that, is the power comes in through this leg, it splits it, it sends it to the old circuit, the old fuse, but it also sends it to the new circuit, which is the fuse slot on the top. So we just take and put a fuse, an appropriately sized fuse. In my case, it's a 10 amp fuse. Make sure they're well seated. Put it back in, and now this is all set to go. And we can test that by turning on the ignition and see if we have power. All right, so now the ignition is on. You can hear that fan start up, I think. And now we check, we have 12 volts of power. Should get the reflection out of the way. We have 12 volts of power on that circuit the way we wanted to. Now let's go turn the key back off and make sure that the power goes away. Put our probe back in here, and sure enough, there is no power. I mean, there's some little trace, 1/10 of a volt or whatever, but that's just noise in the system. Okay, so our circuit is behaving the way that we want to. All we need to do is tie our new DRLs, or my new DRLs, to this line, and it'll all be powered up. Just kind of tuck this wire into place, close it up, and we'll be all done. Now, I did mention that it is possible to put this thing in wrong. And the way you do it wrong is you put it in backwards. Okay, let's take a look here. All right, we have no voltage. And now, with the ignition on, we've got 12 volts. Okay, so what's the problem with that? Well, the problem is that yes, electrically, this is still working. The problem is that when we had it in this way originally, the power was being split and then fed to the original and to the new circuits, the new fuses. When we turn it around backwards, effectively what we've done is we have moved the split point from before the original fuse. Now it's after the original fuse. Okay? Electrically it works. The power does flow through. The problem is that now all the power for both circuits flows through the old fuse. Then it splits and goes to the new fuse and to the original load. It works electrically, but now, as we can see, no power, or we've got power. If the original fuse blows, and I'm going to simulate that by pulling out the original fuse. If we've got it in backwards, you can hear that the fan did not start back up, and also we have no power on the circuit. We have no power, so the one fuse blowing has taken out both circuits. If it's installed correctly, you can hear the fan didn't come on. The old fuse, or the old circuit, is no longer being powered, which is what a blown fuse should do, but we still have power on the new circuit, which is the behavior we want. Now, you may be thinking, well, that's no big deal, but the difficulty is going to be that if you've got it wired wrong, the power for both loads is going through the old fuse, and it's going to be pretty easy to overload that fuse and make it blow, where it blows constantly because there's too much power being fed to it. All right, that's a major pain. The bigger danger here is that you will be tempted to put a bigger fuse into the original fuse, in place of the original fuse. You're going to oversize that thing so that it doesn't blow. All right, now what happens, or what potentially happens, is it's going to work fine, but if something goes wrong, well, let's say something goes wrong with the new load. It begins to draw too much power. No big deal. The new fuse blows and everything's hunky-dory. The problem and the danger comes from if the old fuse, or the old circuit, the old load, sorry about it, the old load, something goes wrong, begins drawing way too much power. If you've got an oversized fuse, it will not blow. And now your old wire, the old circuit wire, is overloaded. And when you overload a wire, it gets hot. You overload it enough, it either melts, burns up, and breaks, or it catches fire. Now, I've seen some people argue that, well, it would never catch fire. It can't get that hot. No, absolutely wrong. I personally have seen a wire literally go up in flames. It was an overloaded circuit. There were open flames in this wiring harness. The insulation on the wires was on fire. So we do not want to ever mess something up to where we have an overloaded wire. How do you know if you've got it correctly installed? The easy way to make sure you've got it right is if you only put it on the top fuse, if you've got it the correct way, you will have power. If you've got it backwards, you will not have power. Oh! Okay, there's a good example of why you want to have a nice, tough multimeter if, like me, you're a klutz. So now that we've determined the correct direction, let's put the original, or the bottom fuse, back in. Make sure both are very well seated. Put this back in. You can hear our circuit, or our fan firing up, so we know that we've got it well seated. And that's it. We're all set to go. Everything is back to normal in terms of the original circuit. And I now have a hot line plus 12 volts that I can use to run my daytime running lights. A couple of things I should mention. One, with a multimeter, it's really helpful to pick up an accessory lead set or an electronic lead set. It goes by different names, but basically it's a series of accessory or different types of leads that you can put onto the multimeter. It gives you things like, instead of just a regular probe, it gives you a little clip that you can use to clamp onto like a post or something. It comes with other things like, for instance, these special little clamps that are designed to reach in and grab hold of a bare bit of wire. It can make using a multimeter so much easier. I'll give you a link to the one that I use down in the video description below. Also, keep in mind that you have to have the correct type of fuse tap for the type of fuse that you're working with. For example, here in this front power distribution box, it uses mini fuses. And so you need to get a mini fuse tap. There are like several hundred different kinds of fuses. Okay, maybe 10. But it seems like there are hundreds of different kinds. If you'll look back at the video, you'll notice that there are two different, or what appear to be two different kinds of fuses. They're both mini fuses, but one is a regular mini fuse and one is a low profile mini fuse. So just make sure that you've got the correct type of tap. And I'll give you links to the ones that I like to use, again, down in the video description below. Now, before you go, please go down there, smash that thumbs up button, give me a like on the video, let YouTube know that you enjoyed this video and you found it valuable. While you're down there, if you're not one of my subscribers yet, go ahead and click on that big shiny red subscribe button, become one of my subscribers. And finally, if you want to be kept up with everything that's going on here in the garage, go and click on the bell icon. That turns on notifications for just this channel, and that way YouTube will always let you know when I post something new from here in Cliff's Garage. I'll see you next time.